Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
Ugh. Hi, Ken. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Taylor, and today we are going to be talking about Greta Gerwig's new masterpiece, Barbie. But before we do that, please go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, go ahead and hit that notification bell so you never miss a video here on Critical Commentary. I just got out of my screening to see Barbie, and I have so many thoughts, so many feelings. This movie was honestly such a thought-provoking project, and it's so hard for me to really, I think, encapsulate like how I felt, because there was a little bit of like pride there was a little bit of sadness, a little bit of anger and frustration. I felt all these things kind of all at once when watching Barbie, and I think that is why this movie was made. I think that this movie took Barbie and the brand of Mattel and used it more as an allegory of our current political and like social environment. I was just crying at the end of the movie and the lights came up and I just kind of had to sit there for a minute because I had to gather myself. I was looking at a sea of pink. I was looking at a sea of women with their girlfriends, people with their girlfriends, having a girls' night, having a femme night. I saw mothers and daughters. I saw couples with some begrudgingly brought boyfriends, but I will say that there were just so many people in this movie of all different shapes and sizes and colors. And it just made me feel so deeply in love with like humanity while still being really frustrated. And I know that this sounds so like chaotic right now, but when I get into my review, I think you'll understand why. Barbie was directed by Greta Gerwig with the screenplay written by both Greta Gerwig and her husband, Noah Baumbach. And he is a writer you probably knew from Marriage Story. As far as Greta Gerwig's filmography is concerned, I have loved her for such a long time. I really enjoyed her Frances Ha. I obviously loved her rendition of Little Women, which I talked about in my trailer reaction to the Barbie movie. I feel like, you know, it's hard to kind of like give this kind of accolade to Greta, because I do feel like while she is a white female, she really does, I think, use her platform to just elevate the voices of femmes and women in a way that I think, despite her using, you know, the visage of other white talent, is able to really kind of tell a universal story. And that is truly what Barbie is. The synopsis of Barbie is that we have the Mattel doll, Barbie, who starts to notice that she's having really dark and, you know, human thoughts.
Do you guys ever think about dying?
And so to figure out why, you know, she's starting to lose her Barbie-esqueness, she decides to travel into the real world to figure out what's going on. And once she, you know, goes into the real world and she sees how different it is compared to the life that her and the other Barbies have created, she starts to really question herself. And, you know, obviously drama, chaos, happens. It's so hard to really get into parts of this movie without really getting into, I think, spoilers. And I'm really going to try as hard as possible to not discuss spoilers, because I want you to go see this movie. I think that this movie needs to be seen. It needs to be seen with your friends, with your partner, with your children. It needs to be a movie that we can all really sit down, watch, and then come back and talk about, because there was so much that was really discussed in this movie, and I felt like using the brand and Barbie as an allegory to discuss that was really effective and really heartfelt, because it got to the human aspect of what people are really looking for in their lives. And they're looking not just for community, but they're looking for purpose. They're looking for a future that's bright. And I think that, because Barbie is an emblem of childhood, it's sometimes hard to not see her in this niche and antiquated way. But I think that's what made the writing and the cinematography go so well with this story, because there is a little bit of absurdism. There is this like Tim Burton kind of color palette that's being used. Like, obviously it's also because it's Barbie and it's Mattel, so you're always going to see that pink, that bright color scheme. But I felt like they were able to use this and then contrast it with the real world in a way that really showed growing up and becoming jaded with how our world really is versus how we envisioned it to be at a young age. Mattel, the brand, and Barbie was created in 1959 by Ruth Handler and her husband Elliot. The first Barbie was actually created after her daughter, Barbara. And Ken was actually named after her son, ironically enough, which is kind of weird, I guess, if you think about the relationship between Ken and Barbie as dolls. But anyways, I digress. And at the time that Handler created Barbie, Barbie was this feminist icon. And, again, we will get into the critiques of this, but that was the point of Barbie. She was an astronaut, she was a lawyer, she was a judge, she was a doctor. Barbie could be whatever Barbie wanted to be. Barbie had this unwavering level of confidence in herself. She was able to do all these things without feeling like she had to sacrifice her femininity. And I think that is why, as we have changed as a society, Barbie has still remained somewhat relevant, but not relevant in the way that, we see her from that original creation. The brand of Mattel has been under fire for years about their lack of diversity, their lack of acknowledging of how body image plays into the mental health of young girls and femmes that are playing with these dolls. And I think that what made this movie so great was that we saw that wasn't really true in Gerwig's version of Barbie Land. There are disabled-bodied Barbies. There are thicker Barbies. There are black and Asian and just other types of Barbies. And so it was so easy to see myself in probably Issa Rae's President Barbie, because, come on, it's Issa Rae. But I could see myself in all of the different Barbies in some sort of way. And I liked how, despite them being all these different things, they still had this childhood essence about them. They were kind of bimbo-ish, if you want to call it that, but I really don't think that was really what they were conveying in a lot of the different Barbie actors' portrayals. I think that what they were really trying to show was this childlike curiosity and this willing to just be happy and to show us what life could be and what we as children, when we were playing with these dolls, saw the world as. And, I said in my trailer reaction for the Barbie movie that I was more of a Bratz person. And that is true. I really was more of a Bratz girl, because at that time I was really into their fashion. But I will say that after leaving the movie, I realized that I was still a big Barbie girl growing up. And I think I forgot a lot of that. I think I pushed a lot of that down once I got older, and I felt like I had to distance myself from my femininity because I was trying to project strength. But I think that's why when I left this movie, I felt so much, because I The minute I got there and parked my car, I saw pink everywhere, not just in the theaters, but like outside in the parking lot. It was fuchsia, baby pink, like regular Barbie pink. It was all these different types of people repping Barbie in their own way. And then to see that representation in this film, it just felt so validating, and it felt so amazing just because Barbie does have a controversial history. And there have been a lot of people, a lot of artists, social workers that have used Barbie as a way of kind of combating a lot of the issues and criticisms that the brand has kind of dealt with over the years. And I do think a lot of that's interesting. I was reading an article that talked about using Barbie for this like craftist activism. You can also go online and see Plastic Bodies, which was a 2003 photo series by Sheila Pre Bright. And she kind of was taking beauty and bringing it more in towards the lens of Black American culture, which I loved. I loved seeing just kind of how she took and imposed like real people's faces onto Barbie, and how she showed the Barbie with locks. Those kinds of things have been really used as a way of not just critiquing Barbie, but I think also having something to say about this iconic toy. Without getting like super deep into spoilers regarding this movie, if I had to give you like a very basic breakdown of the themes that I felt were very present in this movie, I would say this. Like I said before, there is this reclamation of femininity. And I think that with the way that people are looking at Barbie core as a fashion aesthetic, and just the idea of getting back to that hyper femininity and how women and femme choose to dress, I think that that's something that we've kind of gotten away from, but I see it becoming more and more of a thing now that this movie is out. I think that we got into a bit of that like pick me era discussion where a lot of women were trying to separate themselves as serious, and I think that to some people that meant getting away from femininity and seeing femininity as this demonized patriarchal device that really holds women in a gilded cage. I think that now that Barbie has come out, I do feel like, at least for me, and I'll totally speak on just myself, I'm going to reclaim it. I think I'm going to like lean back into the girly things that I used to pretend I detested when I was at that, playing stage of my adolescence. And I think that some people might come out of this movie feeling the same way. Another thing that was discussed was relationships between men and women. And I think this is going to be where people find this movie to be the most controversial. I won't say that it's controversial. I think for those on the internet that are saying that this movie is anti-men, it's not. It really isn't. I think that it's really anti-patriarchy. And because it's anti-patriarchy, yes, some of the male characters are not presented in the best light, but they are also presented as very complex individuals. Even the Kens, when we think about the friend zone and how it's not a real space, it's really this idea of men expecting things from women that they don't truly owe them. And I think that that is a huge theme that is discussed specifically between the relationship of Ken and Barbie, played by Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. But I think even with the other Kens and Barbie dynamics, you see this sense of feeling like the Kens are entitled to a certain aspect of Barbie, whether it's their love or their time. And I felt like this is really something that isn't discussed enough in a very healthy way, because, I know you could talk about like the horror movie Men and how that kind of discusses this in its own way, in a, albeit horror-esque way. But I think that this movie handled it a little bit better, because I think that you can't really have these kinds of conversations when it's an us versus them kind of dialogue. And Barbie really worked hard to not demonize the men, even though the men were doing some wild stuff. This movie also kind of goes into codependency, and I think that it goes into codependency in a few different ways. I think codependent in how some of the human characters relied on Barbie, but I also think like between the Barbies themselves, and kind of going back to what I was saying, that relationship between the Kens and the Barbies, there is this like, who am I without this other person? And I really wish that they had explored it more. I do think that at the end of the day, it was a well thought out arc. I don't think it really needed to be answered in this movie, but I did feel like that was an important piece. And I think this is the best transition too, just because the last really big theme that I noticed in this movie was the relationship between mothers and daughters. This might be a bit of a spoiler, but I don't think it really is a spoiler if you have seen the trailers, especially I think some of the later trailers, like after that initial teaser. But America Ferrera plays a person in the real world, and she has a daughter, and there is definitely, I don't think this like codependency in their relationship, but I do think that there is codependency in their relationship to Barbie from two different sides. From one side, it's this like, I love Barbie, Barbie inspired me, Barbie made me into the person that I am today, as well as this detraction from all of the kind of aforementioned controversial reasons why Barbie has been under fire for so many years. And I think that it kind of tasks them to almost take themselves out of it and to see how, like, yes, well, Barbie is a toy and Barbie does have these positive and negative aspects, that it also really does, it's really based off of the person who plays with her, right? It's not so much about like Barbie telling you these things. At the end of the day, you are Barbie. You can be whoever you want. And I will say there is an amazing monologue that America Ferrera gave. I feel like if she does not get nominated for this scene alone, I mean, this scene had me crying on levels that Saoirse Ronan's monologue in Little Women had me crying. And I got to tell you, Greta Gerwig knows how to write her a monologue, because she had me really feeling the complexities of being a woman, and also like, you know, even though I don't have children, like the struggles of motherhood. Where I think a really big critique with Barbie, you know, comes into play in this intergenerational conversation is that, like I said before, some people really do love Barbie and believe in Barbie and believe in the optimism that Barbie represents, but some people don't. And both sides, I think, are honestly correct. But I think that when you are a mother and you are taking on like your knowledge of the world and you're projecting it onto your kid, I think there's this like living vicariousness aspect there. I think there's also this like generational passing down of just unrealistic beauty standards. I think that there's also this passing down of insecurity. It's not necessarily malicious and it's not necessarily done on purpose, but when I think of just like the relationship with my own mother and how beauty has been kind of cultivated in my mind, I think that is partially some of the reasons why I shied away from femininity, because I have a mother who is really hyper feminine and really believes in that mentality of always looking your best when you leave the house. And not to say that this is like something that is really like full on discussed, but it did have me reflecting on it once I left the movie theater, because I used to see, like I said before, hyperfemininity as a weakness. I never saw it as the strength that it could be. This reclamation of your own beauty and this unwillingness to dull your shine for the sake of others not feeling intimidated.
They want to try to dim my light so their light can shine bright. But you know what? It ain't gonna work.
And again, this monologue, it gets into that. And that's why I really felt like that like element of mothers and daughters really stuck out to me. I noticed that, you know, this is a movie that you can really sit down and dissect some of those things that I think, millennials and Gen Zers are starting to work through in therapy. They're trying to unlearn in their own personal lives about things that their parents taught them. And I think for women and femmes, beauty is a huge and contentious point of those things that people are unlearning. And I felt like this movie, while not being perfect, like, again, it is only a movie. It has, but so much time. And so not everything gets completely fleshed out. But I do feel like despite those, like, nitpick problems, this movie really had a lot to say. And I feel like, yeah, if I don't see this being nominated for an Oscar, I will lose my mind because it really deserves to be. I feel like Promising Young Woman crawled so that this movie could run. You know what I mean? Because there is like this similarity there. I just feel like there was so much done here. The cast was so well stacked. Also, loving how Greta Gerwig poached so many actors from Sex Education. There were like, I think at least 3 actors from Sex Education in this movie, and I loved that so much. But I also just loved seeing just honestly how it all came together. And I think that, while the ad campaign was over the top, and I think for good reason, I think that this movie was very grounded. And I really hope that, if you're not totally sure if you want to see this movie, if you feel like this movie's too girly for you, that you go and give it a try. Because I felt like this movie might have been too girly for me. And I gave it a try. And I'm really, really glad that I did. It left a big mark on me. And I think it's going to leave a big mark on me for days to come. Because it really did have me, it had me want to evaluate how I saw myself. And how the world sees me. And how I think I have really dulled my shine. And I think that despite Barbie being a controversial figure, that is something that Barbie always really taught. And even Eve, Tyra Banks, like, let's not forget about Eve, Black Barbie. Like, these kinds of toys really do serve as a way of inspiring people. And, while I understand that, a lot of the criticism towards Handler was that they felt like Barbie, despite Handler being ethnically Jewish, people felt like Barbie was reigning in this idea of the American dream and the Aryan American dream because Barbie is blonde. At least, the stereotypical Barbie is blonde. But I think that just the way that Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach decided to critique Barbie while still respecting the brand really just, I don't know, it really touched me. And I really hope it touched you if you have seen this movie. I will probably end the video here because I've been talking long enough and I'm so hungry. But I'm really curious to know what you thought about this movie and if you liked it, if you agree and think that this will definitely be a juggernaut at the Oscars, because I feel like it will be. I will be very surprised if it's not. I mean, it's definitely going to get at least a costume nomination, but I would love for it to get a screenplay nomination, a cinematography nomination, as well as major acting nominations as well. So I really think that and director. If I don't see Greta Gerwig up against those other directors this year, I will lose my mind. But anyways, I'm sorry. Yes. Where were we? Oh, yes. What did you think about this movie? Did you like it? Did you love it? Please let me know what you think down in the comments below. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at CriticalCom with 2 M's TV. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Bye, Barbie!